Well, this is going to be a different one. Transformers Day was on Tuesday, and a lot of channels celebrated by looking at the history of the franchise, or toys, or great stories, or in-jokes within, and I didn't have anything. I was really struggling to figure out what do I do for the 40th anniversary of Transformers. I thought about maybe doing a mini Toys of, but those plans fell apart, and now it feels like I'm almost too late for it. But I think what it really came down to is I realized I can show you the history of my time with Transformers. That's a story no one else can tell, how I fell in love with the franchise. But to better tell the story, maybe I should start at the beginning. I was born in 1999, and this would have been the first Transformer toy I was ever made aware of. This is a kid's meal of Armada Starscream. My grandparents would have had this in a box full of toys that I played with whenever I went to their house. I was not aware of Transformers Armada. I didn't know what a Transformer was. This was just one of the toys. Eventually, you would have Transformers Cybertron hit the scene, and I would watch it at 6 a.m. every morning before I went to school. But the big event really had to be 2007. In 2007, the Transformers movie came out, and I was blown away. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. When Blackout destroyed the military base, I had never seen something so cool until about 30 minutes later when Bumblebee showed up, and then I had never seen anything so cool. And then about 10 minutes later when Barricade showed up, well, now I've never seen anything as cool as that. But then eventually you get the Autobots all rolling in together, and that was the coolest thing ever. And then you have Mission City at the end, all the Decepticons and all the Autobots fighting it out, Jazz being ripped apart, Jazz pulling the guns off of Brawl, Optimus punching Bone Crusher so hard his eyeball falls out. That was amazing. It was everything an 8-year-old boy could possibly want. So now, I'm obsessed with Transformers. I need Transformers. And I'm going through a Walmart with my dad, and as we're going, we come across a figure that's just the best. This is my 2007 movie Bumblebee. It is still a really great figure. The transformation is, it's been outdone, but that doesn't change the fact that's my first Transformer, man. I absolutely loved him. He was the perfect toy. But on that same day in Walmart, I was able to pick out a second Transformer. And there was a character whose name I recognized, but whose body I didn't. Starscream. Classic Starscream was my second Transformer. And I knew who Starscream was because of the Michael Bay movie, but I didn't know who that was. Eventually, I was able to go to Hasbro.com and watch episodes of G1, Beast Wars, Armada, and even see the teasers for a show coming out called Transformers Animated. The first episode of G1 I would have ever watched would have been Countdown to Extinction, when Starscream is able to essentially set a trap that's going to destroy the entire planet. It's the last time Dr. Arkeville showed up, and it ends with the Autobots more or less laughing that Megatron's probably going to kill Starscream. That was my introduction to this version of Starscream, and it's also what made me realize there's more to Transformers than just the Michael Bay movies. It would have been later on that year that my dad took me to a comic shop called Galactic Quest, and they had some Transformers I'd never seen before. Like this, Universe Backstop, or the Universe Legends Perceptor. So I'm able to get these two because they're super cheap. And I had seen Beast Wars at this point, so Backstop effectively became my Rhinox. Both of these figures are just spectacular, by the way. Backstop, simple, but a great figure. I love everything about him. As for Perceptor, he is a repaint of the... let's see here. It's Cybertron Defense Red Alert from Cybertron. That's what he is. Great deco on that figure. But the comic book guy, he sees that I'm buying these, and he decides to throw in a little bit extra. He gives me a comic book called Spotlight Mirage. It's a what-if story set in the IDW continuity. It's my first Transformers comic. I didn't even know that they did comics. But that would go on to become one of my main parts of the fandom. IDW specifically is possibly my favorite continuity. and my first ever glimpse into it was in that Spotlight Mirage comic. Unfortunately, there wasn't really a Mirage toy available to me when I was a kid, and thus I never picked him up. But there were a couple of characters, like Optimus Prime, Soundwave, and Hound, that I really, really wanted to find. It's now Christmas of 2007, and Santa really did right by me. For one, I was able to get this Classics Optimus Prime. I finally had an Optimus, and he's a big, beautiful, bulky Optimus. I was able to see that he was like G1, but he was different, and he looks so powerful. Look, he's so much taller than Bumblebee or Starscream. His transformation was great. This would have been one of the biggest moments of my entire life to that point, finally getting an Optimus Prime. Alongside that, I got another secondhand goodie, because, by the way, that Optimus came to me secondhand. It probably would have been a neighbor's kid. The parent was probably throwing out toys and threw out that Optimus, because, it would have been a couple of years old at that point. The other toy they were throwing out was classic Skywarp. I didn't even know who Skywarp was at this point, but I see this guy and he's this beautiful, beautiful deco. And it means that I have another Decepticon. And I know that the Seekers are a thing at the very least, so Skywarp becomes yet another one of my figures. Interestingly enough, I thought Skywarp was a girl at first, because of the purple. And I might know better now, but for a good bit, when I play with these, I'd always say Skywarp was basically Starscream's girlfriend. That's just a silly Ron Bon de John thing. The other thing I got that year was a bunch of Robot Masters. Unfortunately, the only ones I still have are RC and Grimlock. These are my childhood ones. So Robot Masters, they were non-transforming little minifigures, brilliant little toys. I wish that they were still around because they were really, really well done. There were so many amazing things going on in 2008. For one, Transformers Animated would have come out, and we'd start getting little teasers for Revenge of the Fallen. I was still reading a little bit of the comic books at this point, and I was able to get my hands on the original G1 Transformers movie. That is also to say, this would have been the first time I ever experienced Optimus Prime dying. I actually still remember having to pause the movie and hold on to my Optimus there. 2007 and 2008 had a lot of bad things going on in the background. Things that, even as a kid, I was kind of aware of. Christmas of 2007, I actually would have spent in a hotel room because my dad was in a rehab center. And we stayed there with him. It would have been summer of 2008, would have been the last time I ever saw him. Alongside that, at the beginning of 2008, my grandpa, my mom's dad, he would have passed away from lung cancer. And it was just a few weeks after my Papa Deke passed away that I saw Optimus Prime die. And when you're a little kid, you don't really understand how cancer works. You just see that this unbelievably strong person who's so much bigger than you, and the voice gets weaker, and the body gets weaker, and then eventually he can't talk to you at all. And then one day you walk into the living room, and his breathing is erratic, and he's not there anymore. And of course I cried when my grandpa died. But I think the thing that helped me understand it as a kid was Optimus dying. And I know that's so silly and it's so preposterous to say, but as a kid you don't really get death. And I couldn't understand why my grandpa was dead. Why was he gone? He was bigger than me and stronger than me. Well, seeing Optimus Prime die, and specifically dying the way he does on the bed as the voice became weaker, it really devastated me as a kid, but then I was able to kind of understand death happens. You don't have to like it happening. It's always sad, but even these big robots die. But 2008, I was still able to get some good toys. My birthday that year, April, it was actually a pretty good day for me. So, for one, my mom got me a landmine. Oh, what a great toy this is. Still one of the best 2007 movie bots, without a doubt. My grandparents on my dad's side, who, in truth, are probably some of the most important people in the entire world to me, and I'd honestly call them my parents. They were also good to me this year. They gave me Universe Cyclonus. So I finally had another Decepticon, and he's big, and he has a better transformation, and he's amazing. He has Nightstick. He became my Megatron, because I didn't have a Megatron yet. But then my dad, he gave me a couple of gifts too. So he gave me this Universe Hound, which is just a great toy. Very, very solid. And it was fun because he loved Jeeps, and it felt cool that I could kind of share this with him. But the toy that he gave me that meant a whole lot more was this. G1 Bombshell. That was his Transformer when he was a kid. The only one that survived his childhood. And he gave it to me for my birthday. That would have been one of the last times I ever saw him. It would have been the last time I saw him when it was good. And I was able to get Bombshell from him. It means a lot to still have that Bombshell. I actually would have gotten this toy a little bit earlier in 2008, but I think this is the time to bring him in. 2007 movie Cliff Jumper was the first toy I ever bought with my own money. And I bought him when I was on a camping trip with my dad. It would have been one of the last good times I really had with him. And Cliff Jumper became my absolute favorite toy. He was the main toy in all my play scenarios. He was my favorite because he was Bumblebee but red, and I liked his personality on the back of the box. I just thought he was the best. I loved him, and he became essentially the Woody to my Andy. And, you know, it's easy to look back all these years later and kind of psychoanalyze child me. But I think even then I kind of knew a big reason why I liked this Cliff is it was a good time with Dad, and there weren't going to be any more of those. So I just wanted to kind of cling to him, you know? Christmas in 2008 was pretty fun, though. For one, I was able to get this big guy right here. We're going to reach around and get him past Optimus. That's Transketo. He turns into a big mosquito. He was my first Beast Wars toy. Well, I say that. He kind of shares that spot because I also got Sonar. So Sonar and Transketo, they both probably... Because when I got them, they were still in their boxes. They were probably bought at like a comic shop by my mom or something. And I love them both. My favorite thing was I was going to be able to go on like a computer lab at my school, and I looked up Sonar and found out she was a girl. So it's like, this is great. I'm getting like a little bit more like character diversity with these. Plus, Sonar is so grody looking. She turns into a bat. She honestly might be my favorite Beast Wars toy. I'm not even joking. Transketo is also up there for me. The other big gift for Christmas, I guess my mom thought I needed a couple more Decepticons because she gave me Robot Replica's Barricade. This guy's great. Non-transforming, but he's just a wonderful depiction of Barricade from the first movie. And you can see, only 2 years into the fandom, I have a good collection of bots. I have an Optimus, I got a Bumblebee, Cliff Jumper's my favorite, the Decepticons are being led by Cyclonus, and there's all these Seekers and Insecticons, and now Transketo's around, and he's big. So, I was pretty happy with this. What I didn't realize were things were going to become a bit rough in the years to come. In 2009, Transformers Animated was wrapping up. Season 3 was my favorite season yet, and I loved everything about it. I might not have had any animated toys, but I still loved the show so much. And more than that, Revenge the Fallen was coming out. And with how much I loved the first movie, I couldn't wait for the second one. I was convinced that all the toy line characters like Cliff Jumper and Landmine were going to be in this second movie. Unfortunately, that's not how that came to pass. But, for my birthday, I did get one of the new Revenge the Fallen toys. This was the only thing I got for my birthday that year, but I think it was pretty amazing. It's Stratosphere. Oop, here, let me fix his legs. My Stratosphere has managed to survive all this time, but he has a bad crack in his knee, so I have to be very careful with him, but he's still able to stand up pretty well. So I get this massive guy. He's the biggest Transformer I have. Plus, he's a flying Autobot. That's amazing. So I have Stratosphere. That's my birthday that year. And if it was just that, I think I would have been pretty happy. But my mom, for Easter, got me another gift. No candy, no basket. Instead, she got me my first animated toy. Oil Slick. Oh, this guy's so good. Still possibly my favorite animated toy. A great motorcycle, very thin. The proportions are insane. It's the most Derek J. Wyatt thing Derek J. Wyatt ever made for Transformers. And I got him for Easter. The thing was, right, I was watching the cartoon. I loved the cartoon. He reminded me a lot of Lockdown. So I think I kind of convinced myself he was Lockdown. And it was actually like years later I found out Oil Slick wasn't Lockdown, but for years I thought that was just like a toy line version of him. Christmas was going to be a little bit, what's what I'm looking for? Thin this year. The only real thing I got was this, but I still love it. It is the Universe Legends Megatron. I finally have a Megatron. And sure, he's a little bit small, but I just told myself, well, it's because he was shrunken down. It must have been something that Oil Slick did that made him tiny. So now he's still leading, but then you have Cyclonus, who's actually like the Darth Vader to his Palpatine. But it just meant a lot to have a Megatron finally. We're now going into 2010. This is the absolute last year of Animated, and Prime is going to be just over the horizon. There was one more animated figure I got when I was a kid, and I got it from my grandparents. When I was a kid, I had a bad speech impediment. Aside from a lisp, I also had a hard time speaking slowly. When you hear me speak slowly now, it's a conscious effort on my part, because I naturally speak very, very fast. Well, there was a Transformer who did that. Animated Blurr. And I was doing really well at my speech therapist, and I was becoming more and more capable when it came to speaking and speaking deliberately. And my grandparents find out that there's this Transformer character that I fell in love with, Blurr. And the reason I fell in love with Blurr is because he spoke fast, but I understood him because I also spoke fast. So my grandparents, they surprised me with Blurr one day. And just think about that. How lucky I am that at that point, my grandparents heard, oh, there's a character that you can relate to. Here, let's make sure that you have that toy. Just so you can, have them in your life. I'm really lucky to have my grandparents in my life. Doubly so because Christmas that year, I didn't get much from Mom, but for my grandparents, my War for Cybertron, Soundwave. Soundwave is one of my favorite characters. This was the single toy I wanted the most. I so badly wanted a Soundwave. And my grandparents got it to me. And, man, this was a favorite toy. It was him and Cliffjumper. These were my two. I took them everywhere with me. Cliffjumper, I had been doing this for years, but Soundwave joined in on it. Literally, I would put them in my backpack, and I would carry them around with me when I went to school, if I was going in the car. Literally, if I was, just going to see a movie at a theater or something, Cliffjumper and Soundwave came with me because I wanted them to always be with me. So, I end off 2010 still really, really lucky with my collection. It's growing still. 2011 is when my grandparents kind of just stopped interacting with the family, not because they wanted to, but because my mom more or less forced them to. There was a falling out, so I lost my main support structure. Going into 2011, Transformers was more and more important to me. In 2011, I would have played War for Cybertron for the very first time, and I was blown away a video game could ever be that good. It's also the year Dark of the Moon came out, and I thought it was the best movie ever because of course I did. The only toy I would have gotten in 2011 to go with my collection would have been Generations Cup. Once again, this is just a great figure. I loved how he felt. The way I got him was I literally just found him on the side of the road one day. I turned it in to the school, and no one ever claimed it, so eventually the school just let me keep it, And that's how Cup joined my collection. And because I had him and he had his rifle, I just basically turned him into my Ratchet. You know, Ratchet's an old man, Cup's an old man. It worked enough for me. But this is the collection going into 2011. In 2012, Transformers Prime would become my absolute jam, my main thing. And the character I loved most was Knockout. So the only Transformers Prime the only Transformers Prime figure I had as a kid was Knockout. Not the best toy, but man, did it mean a lot to get him. This is going to sound so ridiculous, right? But just stick with me. 2012, I'm 13 years old. I'm starting to realize I think I'm not like some of the other kids. I'm realizing that I'm gay. And Knockout, it was kind of empowering to me to have Knockout and have him be cool and funny and the best character in the show, basically. And it made me more comfortable with who I was. I wasn't comfortable enough yet to just come out and say who I was, but Knockout was priming me to get to that point. We're fast forwarding a good bit of time now to 2014. In 2014, I would have picked up 2 Transformers toys, both from Thrilling 30. At this point, I'm 15 years old, I had my first job, and I was able to pay for these guys and, still give a little bit of money to the family. First guy I would have got would have been Trail Cutter. Trail Cutter is just an amazing toy, and the reason I grabbed him is because, at this point, I'm still reading the IDW comics, and I'm adoring them. So, of course, I want Trail Cutter because he's amazing in those comics. And more and more than meets the eye, is becoming the main thing I take in. My comics, in terms of just entertainment in general, because they're cheap. I'm able to get my hands on them. And Chrome Dome and Rewind are becoming more and more important to me. As time goes on, Cyclonus and Tailgate become more and more important to me. By the end, Drift and Ratchet become more and more important to me. I'm being exposed now to more characters who are like me. And I'm starting to feel more and more secure with who I am at a point in which there's a lot of turbulence in my life. The last toy I really want to highlight right now, the last toy I'd call a childhood toy of mine, is one that I would have just talked about recently. That is, of course, War for Cybertron Thundercracker, Thrilling 30. What a great toy. One of my favorites. It is my favorite Thundercracker. I was able to get him, and I finally had a complete shrine, because I had Starscream, Skywarp, Thundercracker, and sure, Thundercracker's different, but I still had him. He was my guy. I have him at long last, and this toy really is just the best. And that's the childhood collection. And I'm starting to feel better. Things look like they might be going up. It would have been in 2015 that we lost our house. And then we would have spent about 8 months living in our car. So at this point, I am 16 years old. I have a job. I'm helping pay for food. We have sleeping bags. We're in an area where we can essentially just park our car wherever we want. On good nights, we'd go sleep outside in the sleeping bags. On rainy nights, we'd all sleep in the car together. Basically, the only physical possessions I still have are I have comic books, and I have these guys. But not all of them make it. Trail Cutter? I have no idea what happened to him. But my Trail Cutter just kind of up and disappeared one day. Knockout? I think we accidentally threw him out with the trash one day, so he's gone. Hound? There was a flood. I wasn't able to get everything inside, so I lost him. Same flood. Lost Megatron, and I lost Backstop. So those are 2 more gone. Starscream. I have no idea what happened to him, actually. He's just gone. Bumblebee. My first Transformer toy. Someone would have rolled over him in a car, so he's gone. You would have Barricade here. He got chewed up by dogs. They got into our food and also chewed up some of our possessions. Barricade was one of them. We're going to get back to that story in a minute. You know, I really loved Landmine. Basically, he was just torn apart. I don't really know by what. We just came back and some of the bags had been gone through. He was ripped to pieces. Skywarp. This poor guy. He fell into the Ripper. Just gone like that. Perceptor is yet another one that I actually don't know what happened to him. But he was gone. The one that hurt the most, the one that when I lost him, I actually cried. Cliff Jumper. Toy I got with my dad. My favorite toy. Dogs got to him too. There went Cliff Jumper. The toys that are still here were the ones that at least mostly survived. Oil Slick lost his legs. Sonar lost her arms. I lost Nightstick from Cyclonus. Basically all the accessories went missing. I've been able to reconstruct most of these guys. But these are the childhood survivors. The ones that actually made it all the way to adulthood with me. These were my guys. Cup, Blurr, Stratosphere, Optimus, Transketo, Oil Slick, Cyclonus, Thundercracker, Soundwave, Starscream, Bombshell, RC, and Grimlock. These were basically my material possessions. They're like a security blanket to me. There were a lot of nights where, I'm not ashamed to admit it, I cried. Where I was really scared. Or I thought about doing some really bad things to myself. And having these things around and being able to transform them or just remember some of the good times, they help me get through. And eventually, my grandparents find us and they help us get out of the situation we'd found ourselves in. And now, life is pretty good for me. I'm going to school and I have a great collection. I have so many toys that I wanted for so long. I have a lot of good friends in my life. My sisters are doing well. I'm in good health. I'm actually healthier now than I've probably ever been in my entire life. I didn't make this video to try to make a sob story. I want this to be explicitly clear and well known. My life was a lot better than a lot of other people's lives. I had more toys, I had more security, I had food. There were nights I went hungry, sure, but I never starved. Life can be really hard for people. Not just in terms of shelter and food, but sometimes just getting up in the mornings. And ultimately, Transformers is a thing that helped me wake up some days. The first time I would have ever come across a gay character would have been in a Transformers comic. The first time I ever felt like it was okay to be gay was because of Chrome Dome and Rewind. The first time I ever would have come out would have been to some friends on a Transformers message board when I was in high school. I don't pretend to know what life is for a lot of people. But I at least understand what life is for me. And I really do think that Transformers is a big reason as to why life has gone the path it has for me. These characters have meant so much to me. They have made me felt seen, be it because of a speech impediment or my identity. If I needed a father figure, there was Optimus Prime. I feel good about who I am. And I'll be honest, up until this past year, I've never felt good about who I was. But for the first time ever, I've been able to look in a mirror and not be upset with what I see back. And the thing I've had throughout my entire life was Transformers. This franchise, these characters, these toys, the comic books, the video games, the movies, it doesn't really matter how old you are or where you come from, what Transformers are your preferred Transformers. The thing that unifies it is we, as Transformers fans, can find ourselves somewhere in all these hundreds of characters. And maybe, just maybe, we'll feel a little bit better about ourselves and feel better about the people around us. If you want to know the reason why Transformers, I think, is so important, look in my comments. Go to a message board. Go to a convention. You'll find people from every walk of life, from every social background, every economic background. They come from each possible pathway you could possibly undertake in life. I want each and every one of you to know just how important you guys have been to me in this very short ride we've had together so far. Transformers is magic. I'm so happy that I get to share all this with you. That is my experience with Transformers, my childhood toys, and my early memories of it. And I hope maybe, just maybe, you guys can remember what your childhood toys were, or what your first experiences with the franchise were, or maybe even just a time when Transformers made you feel like you weren't alone in the world. Because for many years now, it's always been able to remind me that there's people out there like me, and happiness is always an option.